Hi there, I am back with my fourth YouTube video, and this video is about software companies around the world um, and how fast did some of these companies hit $10 billion in annual revenue. This is a topic I think a lot about. I spend a lot of time going through the annual earnings report of top software companies. What are they building? Where are they spending the money? What are the sectors which are giving them money? And I compiled a list of these 15 companies, which you can call titans because they are exceeding $10 billion in annualized revenue. And I have also highlighted some of these companies like Google, Meta, AWS, OpenAI, Microsoft, Adobe. Uh, so in this video, we'll talk about what are these companies, how long did it take them to hit $10 billion plus in revenue, what are the trends we are seeing now, given that some of these companies, or almost all of these companies, are adopting to AI. How are their share prices reacting? Which of these companies are on upward trajectory? Which of these companies are going down? What are the factors? And then at the end, I also have a few honorary mentions from other parts of the world where there are companies which are doing like $100 billion plus, not entirely on tech. My criteria for the list was that the companies should be primarily doing software, and then secondary they could be in hardware, they could be in other businesses. So for example, Apple isn't included here, but Google is, because that is the company which is primarily getting their revenue from software businesses. And I have also put OpenAI separately. It's a very uniquely built organization. No one quite understand their structure, but on paper, OpenAI hit $10 billion in 10 years. They are currently at $30 million plus annual revenue. In practice, they launched at the end of 2022, so it just took them like 2 years to go to 10 billions in annual revenue. So it kind of makes sense to keep this company here. So let's get into the first interesting data point of this video. So in this video, you can see that how long did it take these companies to go from 0 to 10 billion plus. And this is a bar chart of number of years. So Alphabet, Google took 8 years, AWS 10, Meta 10, OpenAI 10. Some would argue OpenAI took 2, and I would also love to say that OpenAI took just 2 years, going from a billion to 10 billions. Salesforce, ServiceNow, Microsoft, Oracle, Constellation, SAP, Adobe, Bloomberg. Bloomberg does a lot of things, but 80% of their revenue comes from Bloomberg Terminal. Then there's Intuit, IBM, ADP. You would notice something very, very interesting, that companies that were founded at the beginning of tech revolution took the least amount of time. And you would also notice one more interesting fact, that when there is a significant shift happening in tech industry globally, when there is a outlier event happening, you would see new number of companies getting into these growth cycles fairly quickly, compared to companies like IBM, ADP, which took almost their entire lifetime to hit these numbers. What used to happen over a decade is now happening in a year. That's another debate, that is it sustainable, is it a hype, is it a bubble? I might make another video talking about AI bubble, AI hype, but in this video we'll purely talk about what it takes to go from 0 to 10 billion and what kind of industries these companies are operating in. Another very interesting data point here is that what's the revenue comparison look like. So if you look at the company with highest amount of revenue is Google, Alphabet. At this point, it's safe to say that Google is the internet. They own YouTube. They have built transformers, which are the foundation of AI. They have their own servers. They have Android. Google has ad revenue. So, and they're also into hardware. So Google completes the entire spectrum of what a tech company can do. On the next stage, there is another company which completes the entire spectrum. And if you combine Microsoft, OpenAI, and you see that as in one entity, they are the current winners in the race. So Google, Microsoft, top of the line. No one really comes close. And then as we move down, so there are companies which are into cloud. Cloud is the segment which is printing money, and it will continue to print money. Right now, there's a huge shortage of compute around the globe, which means that if there is demand, we will see more and more supply being built up. A lot of this supply can only be built by giants because the scale of these operations is huge. But at the same time, you'll also see a lot of smaller companies coming in, building compute and supply that is being locally deployed for countries or for companies who don't really need the global scale for their data centers. And then as you move down the list, you have IBM, Oracle, SAP, Salesforce, Adobe. Very interesting thing is happening on the share price of Salesforce and Adobe and some of these companies, because as AI is taking over, there are a lot of smaller players coming in, eating into their revenue with simpler solutions, and with even price effective, faster, better, cheaper solutions. And then there's OpenAI in this list. I would love to like put OpenAI and Microsoft together. Then there's Bloomberg, ServiceNow, Constellation Software. And if you don't know names of any of these companies, I would highly recommend that you go and read their Wikipedia page. That's where you start your research. It's very interesting to see the journey of some of these companies and how they evolved with every new phase of technological change. Let's quickly look into some interesting data patterns in terms of share prices. So I'll start with Salesforce. And if you look at Salesforce last 1 year to date, it is down 16%. If you look at if you look at 5 years of data, it's like 2-3% up. And over last 1 year, it has been going down. If you look at Adobe, another company which is being, their revenue is being eaten by a lot of smaller players coming in. 24% down year to date. And then you can extrapolate on these numbers. You can also go on and check a lot of other large CRM players, large software companies, which are older, which are trying to embrace AI and build that into the systems. But the problem is, and it can be summarized in a very simple way, that when a tech company starts, they are trying to solve one problem in the most efficient manner. With time, as it grows, there are more and more variety of customers that come in. Every different variety of customer has a different requirement, and then the software turns into a complex, bloated system, and it reaches to a certain point where when a new user comes in and try to make sense out of it, it looks like a lot of work sitting on their shoulders. And there comes an opportunity for a new, smaller player which is just trying to solve a very simple problem. And then when you see that simple solution in comparison to Salesforce CRM or in comparison to Adobe software, you take a breath of sigh, like finally someone built it. So if you are a new startup trying to eat into anyone's revenue, current customer base, it's the easiest path is to like pick a problem statement, solve it in the simplest, most human way possible. So this is what is happening with these companies. But then at the same time, there are companies like Google, which could have gone in the direction of bloat, but they fought that thought really hard and stayed. So this is last 1 year, Google share price 33% up. And if you're not invested in these companies, I would highly recommend that you become invested in these companies, because these companies are going to stay there for long. And as we see this cycle of AI startups expanding into like a tree, there are hundreds of startups doing different things. You'll also see a cycle maybe next decade of consolidation, where these companies again either get shut down, get merged into larger organizations, and then a few of these will this might be at 500,000. This is not an advice in terms of investments, it's just my hunch on where these large companies can go. If you look at Microsoft, so Microsoft year to date 22% up, and since we're at the end of this year, it's fair to take an year to date number for their share prices. Again, Microsoft has been innovating really well. At one point it looked like a bloat, but it has come out of that space. Again, there is one more interesting point that you can look that you can take from IBM's data, that IBM has found its footing, a very strong footing in a type of client that won't easily switch to other providers, and that is governments and really large enterprises. And that is the reason it has found its footing. And for last 1 year, it rate 27.89%. It has gone up. Let's look at a few more data points in this table. So if you look at the data of IBM, okay, 63 years it took. 62 years it took to hit $63 billion in revenue. If you look at companies like ADP, 65 years to milestone, Intuit, Bloomberg, Adobe, SAP, and then as we move up this list, these are all pure play software and tech companies. So software is kind of eating the world, and now you can fairly say AI is eating software. You will see a reduced requirement in terms of bloat and an increased requirement in terms of software which sits behind the curtains and does it for you as you need, when you need. And that's maybe another topic of agents and agentic software development. Okay, in this list there are a couple more interesting data points that I want to show. So I have done a comparison based on countries, which country these companies come from. Just for this list, it's 86% US. So these are 86% US companies, which shows the huge dependency the world has on US companies. It's very interesting that if you combine the market cap of these top 10 tech US companies, it exceeds the GDP of Australia. So GDP of Australia is around $1.7 trillion, $1.4 trillion, and then market cap of just a few of these top tech companies from US can exceed that. Then we see Canada, Germany because of SAP, Constellation Software. Next up, I have a few honorary mentions because right now when we are looking at tech companies, we tend to just look at pure play software that is being dominant globally. But then there are certain countries that are building companies for last several decades, and these companies are aggressively spending money into tech and AI, and they are not going anywhere because they have a strong footing in traditional markets. At the same time, they are trying to invest that money back into technological progress that they can make. So let's first start with India, and then we'll talk about China and Japan in that order. So here is the first honorary mention, India. There are two really large behemoths, two very large groups, Tata Group and Reliance Group, and they respectively do $180 billion and $125 billion in annualized revenue. Both of these companies are investing heavily and trying to own large chunks of tech startups in India. And then they're trying to integrate that tech capabilities into their large scale, and eventually they might be in a shape where they help these tech startups expand out of India and have a position globally. Tata has, so this also includes TCS, and Reliance Group has been investing heavily in its telecom infrastructure, has been investing heavily in data centers now. And you can see that probably just in the subcontinent, they will stand out as one of the largest tech companies in the coming few years. And who knows what happens after a couple of decades. Maybe they go global with their services as well. Next in this list is China, and I deliberately did not include China and their companies in this list, and the reason is it's very hard to find a lot of data around this. So number one is ByteDance, really standout play. I don't think anyone can replicate that in the world, with just two products, a news product which is spills to China, and then a video product. They are pulling in $155 billion in annual revenue. Second is Alibaba Cloud, which alone is doing $38 billion, and both of these companies are also playing a major role in building open weight AI models. Then there are a few more companies, NetEase, Baidu, Tencent, which are also pure play software, which are again more than $10 billion in annualized revenue. And then next up in this list is Japan. So if I move to Japan, there's this company which is Corporations, which does 12.5 billion. This company was called Z Holdings earlier, and then it got merged. So they're into a lot of things. They're into online ads, they're into services, software, and this combined in a combined revenue, these companies make $12.5 billion. Very interesting data point here is that while we're not accounting for it at the moment, but it could be a possibility that there are just two sources of world's best AI models. One is US, one is China, and then everyone else is kind of taking the trickle down economic advantage of these AI models, and no one actually goes in the direction of building a real valuable innovation in AI field. Looking at this list, you can say that US is the only country that is innovating at this scale, but in a decade we'll be living in a polarized world where it's the US and China, and they are kind of dominating the pipelines of global internet and data, and they are defining what truth is, what intelligence is. If you go 10 years ago, there were like 4 to 5 companies that would have made it to this list. Fast forward to today, these are 20 plus companies globally in that list. The expectation is that the number of companies that are doing 10 billions and more would keep on increasing, which also eventually makes the value of money kind of disappear at that level. Let's see how it goes. If you are someone who's building an AI company, I would highly recommend that you go into the earnings report of any of these companies, pick it up, look at their expenses, look at where they're investing, look at the key areas where they're minting money from, and then pick one pain point for their customers, solve it in the most simplest, most intuitive way possible, and then build a beautiful piece of software. And hopefully you can also build something that can eat a few $1 million out of their revenue. Have a good one. Till next video, I'll make one more video on the AI hype, because right now the kind of fundraising that is happening in this space, it's insane, and we'll talk about few numbers there, the kind of money that's being deployed, what is happening with that money, and what is the future of this market. Thank you.